Hey guys, welcome to the channel. As you see in the thumbnail, what if Issei has the hidden Longinus, Deity's Annihilation Part 2. Before I start, please do support for more awesome content and subscribe my channel and like this video, and also go support the original author of this story, the Golden Technicolour. I have created my other videos playlist, there you can watch my all videos easily, check out as well. Let's start this video. Issei, after parting with Riaz, made his way to his class, ignoring the spreading rumors passing around him. Once he made it to his class, he got jumped by a figure, with their chest accidentally pushing against his face. Issei. Why didn't you tell us about Riaz Onasama? Caddis shouted, annoyed. Murayama looked on at the scene, holding in a laugh. But Hand-Eye looked nervous, even scared at the mention of Riaz. Issei couldn't see this behind Caddis's breasts though. The boy just stood frozen to the spot as Caddis hugged him, proud. I'm so happy for you. You've improved so much. Caddis praised the teen. Issei just tore himself from her grasp, panting from the lack of oxygen. Caddis realized what she was doing and blushed madly, but before she could apologize and explain herself, the teacher walked into the class and the day began. Issei could barely concentrate during the whole day as all he could think about was Riaz. He couldn't explain what he was thinking, only that his heart knew. He loved her. He was broken from his trance when he saw Hand-Eye looking at him with a regretful look on her face, like she had to do something she didn't want to. I can't kill him. Why Kakabiel? Why do you torment this child so much? All he wants are friends and to not be alone anymore. She screamed in her head, torn between not wanting to die, yet not wanting to kill this sweet innocent boy. He hasn't done anything wrong. There was only one reason these thoughts circulated through her head. She was a fallen angel. She was known as one of the most beautiful angels in heaven, second to Gabriel of course. She fell because of a man. Flashback. Hand-Eye was coming back from a job exorcising a spirit from a little girl. She liked to walk out stress after work. She was in her hometown, Cow. She passed through a park with a water fountain in the center of it. The angel heard light footsteps running. She turned to see who it was and if they needed help, but she was forced against the fountain, unable to move due to strong arms pinning her to the stone. Well. What do we have here? Someone who wants to get fucked. The man said, with a heavy Russian accent. She tried to release herself from his arms, but he had her stuck. He lifted her dress and she tried to scream, but his hand clasped her mouth. With a slow shake of his head, he signaled that there will be no more screaming. He trailed his hand up her thigh. Her problem was, she promised to God that she wouldn't harm another human, but if her innocence was taken, she would be cast out of heaven. She teared up, knowing there was no way out of this that would keep her an angel. Aig. She screamed as a blinding light took hold of both their bodies, and his head was blown off. His hands went limp and his body fell onto the ground. She felt a searing pain pass throughout her body and make its way to her back. More specifically her wings. After a moment, the pain passed as she lay on the ground, sobbing. She unfurled her wings and gasped in shock. They were black as night. She continued to cry, not caring that her wings were out, as a figure approached her. She looked up, tears still streaming down her face. You are one of us now, don't worry my child. I am Azazel, I will take care of you. Flashback end. Hand-Eye dwelled in her past, before she realized Issei was looking at her with a concerned gaze. Are you okay? You look sad. Issei whispered to her. She blushed a small bit at his concern, before nodding her head slightly. Why yeah, I'm fine Issei-san. Hand-Eye confirmed for him. His gaze lingered for a moment longer, then he smiled at her. Not his usual fake smile, but a real, sincere smile that made her heart flutter. I can't do it, I can't. Line break. At the start of lunch, a man came into the room and all the girls swarmed him. It was Kiba Yudo. He made his way to Issei's seat while kindly denying all the girls' advances to him. Issei Hyodo, I am Kiba, Riaz sent me to get you. He introduced himself kindly. Look. The two princes of Kuo together, I might faint. One of the girls shouted out as the others agreed. Issei just blushed and nodded at Kiba. They both managed to navigate the cluster of horny females and made their way to the occult research club room. Once inside, it was only Kiba and Issei in the room, but also a figure behind a shower curtain. I've brought him Buchu. Kiba stated to the girl taking a shower in the corner. Excellent, thank you Kiba. Take a seat Ice, the others will join us soon. The teen looked around the room and sat on a seat opposite the swordsman. After about 2 minutes, another person entered the room, a small girl with white hair, Kaneko. She sat beside Issei, too close for his comfort. Kaneko sensed pain and hurt from his past and related to him on a level with her sister. She wanted to comfort the boy, as Riaz once did to herself. Kaneko pulled out a packet of crisps and offered Issei one. Thank you very much. Issei kindly took the offered food and gave the girl a small smile, which made her blush slightly. As he said that, another figure entered the room. It was a tall girl with pitch black hair, purple eyes and massive breasts, not that Issei cared about that last part. Ara, a new person, nice to meet you. Akeno greeted me. And nice to meet you too. Issei offered back, shyly. Akeno saw this and giggled slightly, noticing his shy personality. Rias then came out of the shower, with a towel around her waist, still dripping some droplets. Issei blushed at this. Now that everyone is here, let's introduce ourselves to our newest member. Kiba stood up and bowed formally. I am Kiba Udo. I'm also a second-year student. Let's get along, okay? Kiba introduced himself for a second time. Kaneko stood up and bowed her head. Kaneko Taoju, first year. Kaneko introduced herself simply, not speaking much. My name is Akeno Himejima, nice to meet you. I'm a third-year student. The long-haired beauty introduced herself, bowing to the young man. And I'm Issei Hyodo, nice to meet all of you. Issei bowed politely. I think it is time for Issei. Show me to them. Svarkova informed him, speaking for the first time since school started. Issei just nodded. Issei stood up straight again and his eyes shone brightly, alerting the devils, all apart from Rias who was amazed the second time round. I am also the wielder of the lost Longinus, Deity's Annihilation. His eyes shifted to and started to shift colors. I am Svarkova, I am the elemental dragon. Svarkova also introduced herself, petrifying and amazing all the devils. Scarlet saved me from fallen angels the first time and she told me about the supernatural. I got killed by another person and Rias Sama saved me. I am forever in her debt. He bowed to his king at the last part. Rias just sighed happily and approached him. She embraced him, still damp from the shower. I told you Ice, you owe me nothing, just make me proud. Rias told him with a blush. The blush grew as he hugged her back. Thank you Buchu. Issei whispered to her, increasing her blush drastically at his proximity. She felt warm and safe in his arms. Like nothing could tear them apart. Issei let go to her disappointment and walked back a step to see her face. I will try my best to make you proud Buchu. I promise. Issei said, with determination burning in his eyes, wanting to be able to repay the woman who saved his life and give him purpose again. I know you will like my Ice. Rias held his cheek with her hand. Buchu, there's been word of a stray nearby. The Archduke wants us to eliminate it. Akeno broke the scene they were having, earning a hidden scowl from Rias, but she suppressed that and nodded. Okay Ice, time for your first fight under me. Rias declares and sets up a magic circle. One blinding flash later, and the club room was empty. Line break. Outside an old, abandoned warehouse, a bright flash occurred out of thin air, and 5 teens emerged. Issei and Kaneko covered their noses with their heightened senses as a dragon, and, respectively, gave them more acute senses. Bloodlust. They both said at the same time. It was here. Right, when we get in there, I'll give out orders of what to do. Issei I want you to only attack on my say-so, okay. Rias gave her game talk. Got it. Issei announced with determination in his eyes. Rias nodded to the group and Kaneko bashed in the door, using her rook strength, with a swift kick. They poured in and observed the room, scanning every inch of the premises. It was very quiet, then came a scuttling noise from the back of the large storage area, earning the full attention of the peerage. I can smell something disgusting. But I can also smell something delicious. Is it sweet? Or is it sour? A feminine voice called out, but it was hard and cold. Stray Devil Vaser, as the heiress of the Grimory House, we have been ordered to kill you. Rias declares loudly. Loud stomps were heard resonating around the vast, almost empty space. High up behind a pillar came a young female, but only her top half, and she was completely topless, showing off her large breasts. Take Takeda, the naked female stray, Vaser laughed evilly. Leaving your master's side and rampaging as you please definitely deserve death. In the name of Duke Grimory, I will gladly eliminate you. Rias declared loudly. The rest of the beast emerged. It had 4 massive beast legs and a normal upper half. You're cunning for a little girl. I will rip your body apart and color it in red just like your hair. The monster barked, but Butchu just laughed. Strays sure do speak in a stylish manner. Kiba. Yes. The swordsman sprinted ahead of the group. Issei only barely caught a glimpse of him using his eyes. Ice, you know of evil pieces, right? Rias turned to Issei and asked. Yes, Scarlet told me briefly about them. There is the king, queen, rook, bishop, knight and pawn, right? Issei looked to his president and told her. Yes, that's correct. Kiba's position is the knight. Its trait is speed. Those who become a knight have incredible speed. A stray devil pulled a spear out from behind it and aimed for Kiba, while still having trouble keeping him in sight. Kiba's weapons of choice are swords. Rias pointed out. Kiba stopped and suddenly he was holding a European sword. He took it out of the scabbard, and the drawn sword reflected the light of the moon. Kiba disappeared and a moment later, the monster howled at the moon in pain. When Issei looked at Vaser again, both of its arms were cut from its torso along with the spear. Blood gushed out of its wounds. This is Kiba's power. Speed that you can't follow with your eyes and sword skills of a professional. By combining these two, he becomes the fastest knight. There was a shadow near the monster's legs and Kaneko appeared. Next is Kaneko. She is a rook. The trait of a rook is extremely powerful strength and defense. Rias continued, though Issei could have guessed that Kaneko was a rook with the strength she showed outside on the door. The devil lifted its giant foot and stomped on Kaneko, but a brief second later, its whole body was being lifted into the air. The catgirl reappeared, with only slightly torn clothes. Fly. The petite girl stated simply. Kaneko jumped high and punched into the monster's stomach very sharply. A sound of a gunshot went off in the storehouse as the enormous body of the monster got sent into the wall behind it. Lastly, Akeno. Rias rounded off. Yes, but you. Ara, what should I do? Akeno pondered, while lightly biting her finger seductively. The queen just giggled as she made her way to where the beast was imprinted into the wall. Akeno is my queen. She's the one who is the strongest after me. She is the unbeatable vice president of our club who has all the traits of pawn, knight, bishop, and rook. Ara, seems like you still have some energy left in you. Then how about this? Issei heard Akeno converse with the monster, still in the wall. She put her hand toward the sky, and a flash could be seen through the glass on the roof. At the same moment, a lightning bolt was sent down from the heavens metaphorically and struck the beast. Gagagagagagagagagaga. Vaser managed to get out through clattering teeth of the vaults coursing through its body. Smoke poured out from its skin. Akeno excels at attacks using demonic powers. She could use natural elements like lightning, ice, and fire. And most of all, she is the ultimate sadist. Rias explains. Issei was taken back by the last part but didn't comment. Uchu, can I show my powers to the group? Issei asks politely to his king, who just nodded kindly at the shy pawn. Okay Ice. Akeno. Let Ice show us his powers. Rias called out to the queen who made her way back, a content smile plastered on her face. Scarlet, is it okay with you if I can use your power again? Issei asked the being inside of him while walking up to the monster. Of course, my child. There is no need to ask. Show this stray who it messes with. Show them the power of the elemental dragon. Svarkova prepared him. He nodded as his eyes changed to draconic. When he was close enough, he stopped moving and closed his eyes, imagining a power course through his body, traveling to his center, ready to release. Okay Scarlet, let's do this. Balance break, elemental armor. Balance break, elemental armor. Mode change, raging fire opposer. An explosion of fire occurred in the middle of the room, washing the devils with raw power, but not harming them. In fact, all the girls felt warm and safe, a fire also growing in them. Once the fire settled down, everyone present gasped at the sight before them. A suit made of a pitch-black metal formed around the boy, but there were flames snaking around his whole surface area. In his helmet, fire streamed out of the mouthpiece, and his eyepieces were tinted red. But despite all the flames, he didn't feel the heat or pain. In fact, it filled him with power. In his right hand, a sword was present, covered in flames with a dragon hilt. Issei took a step forward and stood still after that. Then to everyone's amazement and Vaser's horror, he disappeared. Even Kiba was amazed, even though he couldn't follow his speed. There was a clanging sound as he reappeared in the same spot from the moment before. Everything was still, apart from the flames, for a moment before the monster fell apart, clear-cut wounds around its body, and covered in flames. Issei was still, before the suit deactivated, and as he fell to the ground, Rias caught him. Sorry if I went overboard, Buchu. The pawn apologized tiredly to his king. Rias just giggled at his words. Not a problem Ice, I'm just happy you weren't hurt. You are really strong. You made me proud. Rias confessed with a smile on her face at the bravery of her pawn in his first fight. Issei's face lit up with an amazing smile that made Rias want him to smile more often. Thank you Buchu. Issei said before passing out, unconscious. Rias giggled again and held him to her chest as she was happy with him. Again, she felt warm and safe by holding him, even though he was asleep. I think I have fallen for you, my Ice. Rias confessed in her thoughts. Akeno summoned a magic circle and transported everyone to the clubroom. Rias praised everyone as they made their way home. Rias made her own circle and sent her and Issei through onto his bed. She set him down as she undressed. Thank you. Rias thought, looking at the man she loved. She crawled into bed beside him, not caring that either one of them had had a shower, and just lay on his chest. His arm came up and wrapped her to his chest. She blushed madly and looked up to him. His eyes were open slightly and held a sincere smile on his face. He was truly happy. Rias just smiled back and nuzzled into his neck as he pulled her closer to him, and they drifted off to sleep. Issei jolted awake, throat sore from screaming in his sleep, dripping in sweat. He started having a panic attack in the dark of his room, struggling to catch his breath. He tried to sit up, but his muscles were locked in place, adding to his terror. A warmth spread across his body as he opened his eyes to see a naked Ria sitting over him trying to calm him down. Ice. It's okay. It was just a dream. I'm here. Rias comforted him with a smooth, loving voice. Issei looked up at her, his draconic vision working in the darkness. His breathing slowed to a normal pace, and his sweating stopped. Rias just held him, showing he wasn't alone anymore. Was it your nightmare again? Rias asked calmly, trying to find out the source of his anguish. He just nodded weakly, his strength returning to his body once more. Rias just looked down at him, not caring at her nakedness. She only wanted to soothe the scared and emotional boy. She let go of his arms that he was flailing only moments before. When she released him, his arms snaked up and pulled her into a tight embrace, but not too restricting. He just held her as her presence warmed him to his core. She blushed at his grasp, but held him back with equal passion. They stayed like that for about 10 minutes, enjoying each other in silence. Issei then whispered in her ear. Thank you, Buchu. Rias just smiled, happy with their positions. In private, call me Rias please. When it's just us. Rias asked the boy, wanting to hear the man she loved call her by her name. Okay. Rias. Issei whispered in her ear. That made her hot. She hasn't been called by other people other than her family. This made her so happy she could cry. Rias? Issei questioned, still by her ear. Yes, my eyes. What is it? Rias pushed further, moving her head away to look into his beautiful eyes. I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I can't help it. Issei confessed nervously at her possible reactions. You can tell me anything, you know that. Rias comforted the boy. Okay, I love you. Issei confesses, his heart pounding at the thought of her turning him down. Rias just sat, staring into his eyes. He took this the wrong way. I'm sorry, I'll go. He didn't get to finish his sentence as Rias smashed her soft lips against his. He was surprised for a moment, but kissed back without any restrictions. They kissed for about a minute before they had to part to gather air. They sat panting, gazing into each other's eyes. Rias were slightly glazed over in love. I love you too, Ice. I was afraid you didn't feel the same way, so I didn't say. I didn't want to lose you. Rias confessed, tears threatening to fall from her blue-green eyes. This made Issei's heart leap in his chest. It physically hurts to see his love cry. He just renewed the embrace, holding her to him as it was his turn to comfort her. I would never leave you. I love you, Rias. So much. Please don't cry, I hate it. Issei still held her as she started to cry. Neither of them said a word as they just lay on the bed, holding each other. After Rias stopped crying at his possible reactions, she leaned up and continued to stare in his eyes, loving the way he looked at her. He was hers. Only hers. Rias gave him a peck on the lips as their alarm went off, showing the need to get ready for school. Rias lifted herself off the boy and stood in all her naked glory. Issei would have normally averted his eyes at the sight, but he just took in all her beauty. She blushed under his gaze, but loved every second of his gaze. After Issei got up as well, he started breakfast for the two as she showered off his sweat from the nightmare. She didn't mind having his scent on her, but for hygiene she had to rid her skin of it, to her disappointment. When she emerged from the shower, she ventured downstairs, looking for her love and pawn. She followed the glorious smell of feet as it brought her to his kitchen. He was by the oven with his back to her, only dressed in a pair of trousers from yesterday. She stood in awe at his body, but in slight worry at his scars. She snuck up behind him and held him around his chest, being a head shorter than him. He snuggled into her hold and temporarily forgot about the food. She let him go and sat at the table, awaiting the food. Not out of laziness, just that he told her to sit as he brought the food. He placed a Western dish in front of her as she dug in. She loved every second of it. He stood happily as she enjoyed her food, and he made his way to the shower. When she finished his daily routine and got dressed, he found Ria's hand washing the dishes, saving him the effort. It was his turn to sneak up behind her and held her around the stomach and kissed the inside of her neck as she moaned lightly. She loved his lips grazing against her skin and held his arms. After about 30 seconds, he ceased in his loving display, to her disappointment. It made her want more. She hid her emotions and dressed herself in the school uniform with magic. He was in awe at how she looked amazing no matter what she wore. She found his eyes and held his hand, which he blushed at, and they made their way to school. Line break. Once in the gate, the same as last time, every eye was on the two. Oh my god. Are they a couple? They go so well together. A girl exclaimed and her friends nodded in agreement. Oh, he has Ria's on Osama, I'm jealous of her. A different girl shouted. How is that fair? Share you dick. A jealous guy shouted. Ria started to get annoyed at the comments to her love, but Issei slightly tightened his grip on her hand. She calmed down almost immediately after his comforting grasp. They continued to make their way to class when they entered the school. When in the main door, Issei turned to Rias. Well, I'll see you after school, Uchu. Issei finished with a 10-second kiss on her lips which she sunk into, happily. When they broke up, Issei gave her a kind smile and went on his way. Everyone present was shocked at the show of affection, one or two girls even fainted. Riaz was unaware of the crowd as she just giggled in glee to herself. She made her way to class, with a new skip in her step. When Issei managed to swerve his way through the swarming crowds that were either congratulating him or confronting him for stealing one of the hottest girls in school, he entered his class. Once he entered, he gave a big sigh of relief at being able to keep his life traversing the corridors. He made his way to his seat and noticed that the class was only about half full, with the three girls at their seats, conversing with each other. Issei sat in his seat and joined the conversation. Issei-san, what do you think would be better? Having all your school breaks at once? Or spread out over the year? Cadis questioned Issei, with a look of frustration on her face. Issei guessed it was because the other two didn't agree with her. I would say spread out, so you have breaks in between terms, so all your work wouldn't pile up and put you under too much stress. But that's my opinion. The teen answered, cautious not to take sides. Aha. Cadis roared at the two. It's good to see someone has some sense. Murayama just rolled her eyes, but Handai forgot about the conversation the second Issei sat down. She didn't make eye contact with the boy at all, pretending to be lost in thought. Issei noticed this and looked at her with a deciphering gaze, trying to work out what was wrong with the normally bubbly girl. Handai looked up to see him looking at her, not with resentment but with worry, showing he cared for the girl. Ice, you know what, she is right. Svarkova asked the child nervously, not sure of his answer. Yeah, I know Scarlet. She's a fallen angel. I knew when I first fought the group and remembered their scent. Issei told the being. But I don't care. She has done nothing wrong and I can tell she has fallen against her will. She became my friend and stayed my friend when I became a devil. I will not hurt her. The teacher entered the class and the day started. Line break, yes sir. A nervous Fallen spoke to his superior. Rivashioto's son is alive, and in cow. The superior Fallen stopped what he was doing, his anger growing with each passing second. Well, why hasn't he been killed yet? Kakabiel questioned through gritted teeth, trying to control his anger. Well, Narkov's group failed the first time, and Donasik did kill him. Well, speak up. The fallen soldier shook with fear at his boss. Well, a devil reincarnated him. The Kabiel just sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. And there's more. He has a sacred gear. The foot soldier didn't get to see his boss's reaction as a light spear was sent through the messenger's head. Kakabiel was shaking with rage. He should be dead. I shot down the plane with him and his parents on it. He should be dead. If the child was alive, it only spelled problems for his plan. He was the son of an ultimate class devil and had sacred gear. He could only imagine how powerful he was. Line break. Issei finished his class and was on his way to lunch with the trio as Cadis and Murayama continued their earlier argument with Issei between them. Hanai lagged behind, still pondering in her thoughts. Issei dropped back a little and walked beside the Fallen. She hadn't even noticed him before he talked to her. Are you okay? You've been spacing out all day. Issei inquired. She jumped at his close proximity and blushed before showing him a well-hidden fake smile and a nod. But Issei saw right through it. It was the same smile he had on his face every time someone talked to him after the crash. You know, you can talk about the issue, that's what friends are for, right? Issei comforted the girl. Her heart jumped at that. She hated herself at his remark, knowing she had to kill him, now that Kakabiel knew the boy was alive. He told her she had to do it that night or he would kill her. I know Issei-san, but this matter should be kept locked away. She confessed while looking down. The two were silent as they walked through the hallway. Ice. He said simply. She looked up at him in confusion. Call me Ice, it's what my parents called me. The boy explained, a small twinge of sadness hit her as he talked about his parents. Are you sure? She knew he was sensitive about his parents, so she had to make sure. Yay, I want you to. Oh okay, Issei smiled at that, thinking it put her to rest. But it only made her worse. They reached the cafeteria, got their lunch and sat down at an empty table. Riaz and her peerage also sat at the table, to Issei's happiness and to Hanai's worry. Riaz knew she had fallen, but she was Issei's friend and she hadn't caused any harm, so she let her pass. Hey Ice. Riaz exclaimed, happy to see her lover. Cadis, Murayama and Hanai sat in a row respectively, with Issei and Riaz next to them, and Akeno, Kiba and Kaneko facing them. Riaz fed Issei some food, which he blushed at. The others weren't so happy though. The trio was annoyed she stole their crush from them. Akeno was slightly sad that Riaz got Issei before she did. Kaneko looked neutral, but was slightly jealous at the show of affection. Kiba, on the other hand, was happy for the two, as they both deserved happiness in their lives. After Riaz fed him some more, he turned to her and she blushed, a shiver snaking down her back at his gaze. He slowly leaned in and kissed her slowly, which she melted into and moaned lightly, so only her love could hear her. After about 10 seconds of uninterrupted kissing, they broke, both panting and blushing slightly. Issei looked around and noticed everyone was staring at them. All the girls looked jealous, even the normally stoic Kaneko. Kiba just chuckled lightly at the crowd staring. Sorry, I don't know what came over me, it's just, you are so beautiful," he confessed, his ears reddening. Rias just blushed heavily and kissed him on the cheek. Her heart did a flip as he said that. Her love for him grows each day. She wanted him to compliment her more, but the bell rang and they had to part. On the way to class, the three girls walked in silence, even Hanai forgetting she had to kill him. They were too annoyed about the sudden show. Once in class, the rest of the day started. At the end of class, Issei volunteered to clean up the class and such. At the end of his work, the sun started to set and he made his way home. He walked through the empty streets of Kao before deciding to take a detour. He walked through the park before he found his way to a fountain. He heard the rustling of feathers and a few, long, black feathers dropped in front of him. He looked up to see a fallen, but not just any fallen. It was Hanai. Ice. "I'm so sorry that I have to do this," she told the boy below her. She was crying heavily, tears streaming down her face. She was in a skimpy outfit, not well suited for battle. It was only a leather strip, reaching from her shoulders, across her massive breasts and across her womanhood. Please. Forgive me," she muttered, and his draconic hearing allowed him to hear her. She didn't want to do this. She summoned a light spear in her hand and launched it at the boy. It caused a big explosion, but she had a barrier around the area, so no humans could enter. She put plenty of power into it so she could kill the boy without any pain. He deserved a quick death over agonizing pain. Once the explosion happened, she cried out in pain. She had just killed her friend. A shy and innocent boy who only wanted friends. A boy who had so much pain in his life, but he held no anger to anyone. From her crying, she couldn't hear words being said. Balance breaker, elemental armor. Balance breaker, elemental armor. Before she could react, a figure leaped out of the dust and flew at a breakneck speed towards the girl. Time seemed to slow as she thought it was her last moments alive. She closed her eyes in fear. The figure reached her, but it didn't attack. She opened her eyes to see a face looking back at her. Issei. He didn't look at her in anger or resentment, only showing care in his eyes. His arms were wrapped around her body as he held her. She was frozen in shock before breaking down and crying loudly in his arms. She almost killed him. Issei just floated back to earth and held her for some time as she let out her tears. When she stopped about 5 minutes later, she was scared for her life. "I am so sorry, Ice. I was wrong." Issei just tightened his grip on her. "It's not your fault, Hanai. I know that you were fallen, and I know you didn't want to kill me. I'm sorry to make you scared." Issei reassured her gently. She started to cry again at his forgiveness. He was a great person, and she felt safe in his arms. She found herself very tired from using so much power in one throw and nodded off in his arms. He just chuckled lightly before he headed home. Line break. When Issei let himself into his house, Rias was cooking food for him and was about to greet him before her jaw dropped and ran to his side. "Oh my gosh, Ice. Are you alright?" Rias fretted, seeing blood on his face. His mask took the brunt of the explosion, but it still hurt him slightly, not that he cared. "I'm fine, Rias. Honestly, just a small cut." He reassured her with a small loving smile, which she became entranced by, then she snapped to her senses. How did this happen? Her eyes wavering over the unconscious fallen in his arms, she started to get angry, a red aura covering her. "Rias?" Issei said softly and Rias instantly calmed down. "She didn't want to attack me. She was crying the whole time, and when she tried to shoot me, she was heartbroken. It wasn't her fault," Issei explained to the red-haired beauty. She was in thought for a moment before she nodded with a small smile on her lips to show she believed him. He sat the girl down on his sofa and went to go clean up himself. Just after Issei left, Hanai started to stir and sit up, only to realize she didn't know where she was. Then, the memories came in. She started to tear up before looking around and seeing Rias watching over her. She was instantly scared and her breathing increased rapidly as she tried to explain herself. "It's okay, Hanai. I said you didn't want to kill him, and I believe him. I don't care that you have fallen as long as Ice is safe," she warned the fallen. Hanai just sat in shock as the Princess of Annihilation let her live when she attacked Issei. Hanai just nodded weakly to the girl as Issei came downstairs. "Ah, Hanai, you're awake." Issei greeted her with a warm smile. She blushed at this, then she saw he was holding a towel to his head. She gasped knowing she did this. She weakly stood up and wobbled over to Issei as he caught her and steadied her. Hanai lightly pulled away his hand and covered a gasp escaping from her mouth and she started to tear up, knowing she hurt him. She put her hands to the side of his head and Rias got ready to attack at one wrong move. But even the heiress was amazed at what happened next. 2 silver rings appeared on her index fingers on each hand and emitted a faint green glow. Issei's cut healed rapidly, leaving only the blood as evidence that he was cut. Twilight healing. Riaz mumbled slightly. Hanai nodded slightly and checked his head again. Once she saw he was fine, she sat down again. Wow. Thank you, Hanai. Issei exclaimed gratefully. She looked at him with wide eyes. He thanked her after she tried to kill him. What is this boy? Issei, I'm so sorry about earlier. I had to kill you, I was ordered to, and he told me he would kill me if I didn't. Hanai blurted out suddenly, feeling a rush of emotion. Issei just smiled slightly. He just hugged her lightly for a moment and whispered in her ear. I know. I'm not angry at you. It wasn't your fault. You're safe here. No one will kill you on my watch. No one. Issei promised to the girl as she felt so happy. She hugged him back for a moment before they broke. Riaz smiled at her pawn. Her love for him grows more with his forgiveness. He told Hanai to spend the next few days here as he wanted to keep her safe. He would protect her, even at the risk of his own life. He would save her. Flashback, the tall man made his way through a hall. It was very lavishly decorated, filled with gold and diamond statues. He walked briskly through the hall till he stopped in front of a door. This man was Revaus Ikrand, the ultimate class devil of the House of Ikrand. He was tall, at about 62, had yellow eyes and short nightmare black hair. He knocked on the door and waited for a moment before it opened and two guards approached him. Identification. The taller of the two asked. Revaus Ikrand, House of Ikrand. The devil announced, with a small hint of pride, but not arrogance. The smaller one nodded to the taller and they moved aside to let him through. Once he had entered, he noticed the room had changed from the last time he had been in the Mau's throne room. Inside the room, it was even more expensively decorated than in the hall, with statues of the current and past Mau lining the walls, with detailed paintings, with famous painters. In the center of the room stood 5 thrones. 2 of the thrones were currently filled, with one being a young man and the other being a woman who looked about mid-30s. Revaus approached the thrones and knelt to the 2 figures of immense strength. Don't bow to us, Revaus, we have been friends all our lives now, don't start to act formally now. The male Mau present joked lightly. He was in his early 20s, had shoulder-length red hair, and had blue eyes. This was Surzich's Lucifer, formerly Surzich's Gremory before he became the Devil King. Yes, Surzich's, the kneeling man said as he got up, it's been a while since we have been together. Too long? The woman on the other throne said, with a soothing kind voice. She had waist-length brown hair and soft brown eyes. She was about 511 and had a calm aura to her. This was now Satan. Previously known as now Ikrand, Revaus's sister. Hey sis. The yellow-eyed devil greeted his sister with a smile on his face. He didn't look like a happy person, but when he smiles, it warms your center. It fit so well on his face and brightens the whole room. He looked like he was radiating light. Well, to business. Surzich's smile faded as he went to business. Revaus turned his gaze to Lucifer and started. It's about Medina. She's pregnant with our child and I wish to live in peace with her. Almost all high-up devils respected the Ikrand male as he was extremely strong and selfless. With his elemental abilities, he was one of the top-set ultimate class devils, coming close to Surzich's power. He was also a very kind and pure soul, despite being a devil. Everyone knew of his love for his friends and family, especially his human girlfriend, Medina Hayoto, and no one looked down on him for loving a human. Most respected him and his choices and knew the human was kind. Even if they didn't respect his choices, they wouldn't dare speak up as they would face the wrath of a being who can put up a good fight with a Mau. Surzich's and now alike looked both happy and troubled with this statement. They both loved and respected the two and wanted the best for them. But on the same hand, he was one of their strongest warriors and smartest advisors as he was asked his opinion on many political problems. Well, we are both happy for you, Surzich said with a small smile, but we would like you to reconsider this action. Yay, you are one of our best and you could just make Medina into one of your peerage. Now pointed out, trying to sway her sibling. Revaus understood where they were coming from but still stood strong. I know, but I wish to spend some time with Medina and I have planned to marry her and I fear that if she was part of my peerage, she would be targeted by our enemies. Surzich's and now shared some silent conversation and nodded in agreement. Sias Mau, I would command you to stay. Revaus was about to argue with him, but he continued, but, as your friend, I say, go be happy with Medina, you two need it. He finished with a smile that now held as well, happy for her brother. Revaus was relieved. Thank you. I will return often, and when our child grows up, they will be a strong soul. Good luck, brother. Now wished him. He kneeled once more, then started to walk away. When he reached the door, he looked over his shoulder at the two. If war comes, call. He exited the room with the two Maus laughing slightly at his remark. Line break. Issei and Riaz made their way to school, with Hanai staying at home to recover. They walked hand in hand, with their relationship growing each day. They walked through the gates of Kuo Academy and made their way up the main path. Riaz leaned her head on Issei's shoulder as he snuggled into her touch. They walked slowly to the main door, relishing every moment of contact before parting and faced each other. "I'll see you after school, Riaz." No one was around, so Issei called her by her name, and it was safe to say she loved it. Her core warmed up and her face blushed as she stared dreamily into his eyes. He slightly leaned forward and slowly, but passionately kissed her lips. She kissed back just as passionately and moaned into him. They parted, panting and blushing and wanting more. They touched their foreheads and gazed into each other's eyes. Riaz leaned back, reluctantly, and kissed him lightly on his lips for a moment before saying goodbye and parting from him. He looked around and saw they had drawn a crowd, with people having their phones out, taking pictures and videoing the whole thing. He blushed more and made his way to class. Line break. "And I woke up in the early afternoon, feeling hungry." She sat up and her mind finally registered where she was. She felt around her and her eyes adjusted to the room. She was on a sofa in the living room. Then her memories came flooding in. Her heart flipped at her actions, then dread set in. Kakabiel would look for her. Kakabiel might even send him. She got dressed in her school uniform using magic, but at that moment, her stomach rumbled furiously. She made her way to the kitchen and said a meal was set out for her with a note. "Hannah, this food is for you as you will probably be hungry when you wake. Don't worry about yesterday. It wasn't your fault and took some time to rest. Just stay in the house till I get back so you are safe." Issei. And I was relieved at his forgiveness and the food alike. She dug into her cold western dish, and even then, it was amazing. She sat down and watched TV while she finished her food off. Then came a knock at the door. Line break. When Issei's class finished, he made his way to the orc and entered, seeing everyone present. Sorry I'm late, I had to help the teacher clean up." Issei said shyly, feeling bad for holding everyone up. Riaz just chuckled slightly. "Don't worry, Ice, we weren't waiting for long." He smiled shyly and gave her a small smile and sat down beside Kaneko, who offered him some food, to the surprise of everyone. She never willingly shares. Akeno notes. "Thanks, Kaneko-san." Issei kindly took the slice of cake offered to him from the loli. "Okay, down to business, Ice, let's get you started on some devil requests soon, now that you have settled." Riaz started. "Okay Buchu, I'll do my best." Issei stated confidently. "As expected, my Ice. Don't worry though, by doing these requests, you can make your way up the devil rankings soon. Ara, if you ever need help on these, just let me know my cowhide." Akeno teased him sexily. Issei just scratched his head and blushed at that, as Riaz sent her a glare. After that was over, the group just chatted mostly, and Issei got to know the group more. At the end of the session, everyone had left, bar Issei and Riaz. "Buchu, I mean Riaz." Issei started, avoiding her gaze. She looked at him, amazed how in certain times he could be confident, but at others he was extremely shy. "Yes, my Ice. Would it be okay if you could stay at mine tonight, in case I get the nightmare? Oh, only you can stop it." He finished, looking up at her. She blushed slightly, but smiled greatly, lighting up the room. "Of course, Ice, I would love to." Issei smiled happily at this and helped Riaz to pack her things away. Line break. The whole way home, they held hands and stayed close to each other, not wanting to be apart. Once they reached Issei's house, they gasped. The front door had been smashed through, tear marks visible in the wood. They exchanged glances for a moment before approaching the house. They entered, with Riaz coated in her aura and Issei's eyes shifting elements. They were ready for a fight. When they entered the house, Svarkova spoke up. "Let me help." She spoke calmly to the two. Issei's eyes changed to have a wide iris, and the room lit up, shining the way for the two to see. "Thanks, Scarlet." Issei heard a hum as a response, as she was happy to help the boy. The whole room was torn up and the walls scorched. It looked like someone slashed a weapon of sorts through the wall and ripped the furniture. Then it clicked in Issei. "Oh no." Riaz looked at him as he looked at the ground, eyes widening in realization. His head shot up. "Hannah?" he shouted in the house. "Hannah?" But no sound was heard. He scoured the room with his enhanced vision, and something caught his eye. He ran over to the kitchen and pinned to the wall by a black feather was a note. It read, "If you want to see Hannah again, come to the abandoned church and come alone, or we will kill her." When Issei read it, his head dropped and his hair covered his eyes. A thick yellow aura covered him, fluctuating in the air. Ria's eyes widened at what she saw and sped towards him, but the aura was too strong, and she was stopped before she could reach him. "Ice!" Ria screamed out. This brought him back to his senses. The aura almost instantly stopped and he dropped to his knees. "I failed her, Riaz," he muttered. Riaz just knelt beside him, held him and whispered something in his ear. He looked up at her in shock. She just nodded and his eyes gained a flare. He would save her like he promised. Line break. In the church on the hill, it was run down and corroded by the elements. The windows were dusty and the cross was destroyed. Down a hidden set of steps, a ritual of sorts was happening. There were about 25 to 30 people with cloaks and hoods covering their faces. exorcists. On a podium was a cross with chains. There was a person chained up. Hanai. Beside the cross was another woman, this one with long black hair and wearing a skimpy outfit. Rainer just laughed at the pitiful scene before her. Shouldn't have disobeyed Kakabiel, stupid bitch. Rainer spat. Hanai just about raised her head to look at the fallen before her. She was too tired to put up a fight after the struggle in Issei's house. Rainer had won. Want to know what this ritual will do? Rainer rhetorically asked the brunette. It will forcefully remove your sacred gear, killing you in the process. Hanai was in shock, she was never involved at this side of the fallen angel's side. It will begin soon, and don't worry, it will be very painful. Rainer laughed evilly, and the cross was covered in light, draining Hanai of even more of her strength. Please anyone help. As if by magic, ironic, I know, the exorcist started to notice something was wrong and the door was blown open, showing Issei with his face hidden by his hair. I swear, does every anime do this? The whole room was silent and in shock. Hanai's vision was failing her, but she could make out a figure in the crowd. Voice, that. She just thought before she passed out. The room was still silent and they all watched Issei. On Issei's end, his rage was growing exponentially. You took Hanai. An exorcist walked forward and went to stab him with a light sword. You took her, and I will get her back. He finished ominously, before the exorcist swung at him. Then all hell broke loose. Issei's shifting aura exploded out, killing the first set of people in one go, before he looked up, seeing the pure, raw hatred visible in his eyes. Balance breaker, elemental armor. Balance breaker, elemental armor. Mode change, cataclysmic thunder. The boy's aura increased and turned full yellow, and swirled around his body. The lightning meshed around him and formed a yellow suit of power around him. The armor is made for speed, as it is lightning. Issei just stood still in his suit, with 2 daggers of pure electricity in his hands. Then, with the sound of a whip cracking, he disappeared and appeared in front of the exorcists. He flicked his wrist upwards in the first, with his dagger tearing his body from his chest to his head apart. The second his knife was free, he shot to the next and embedded his other in his throat and threw his first knife at a group of people, with the energy coursing throughout their group, stopping all their hearts. The knife flew back to him using his powers, and he shot forward with his fist extended at a lone cloaked figure, successfully caving his skull in with brute force. His knives then melted together to make a double-edged western sword. He took the sword and used his thunder to spin him around, with the blade extended, ripping apart 6 unsuspecting exorcists. He then took his sword and slammed it into the ground, sending shockwaves around the room, arcing energy throughout the remaining few. In a matter of 20 seconds, this kid just wiped out 28 exorcists. Rainer was floating in the air, watching the massacre with a horrified look. Issei had finished and was panting lightly before his sword disappeared and sped at incredible speeds to the fallen, nearly reaching Mach, even in such a small space. Rainer was punched so hard and at such speeds that she felt her organs just vaporize in her. She was flung into the wall and almost all her bones broke. She coughed up an extreme amount of blood and laughed slightly. This pissed off Issei. He sped right in front of her, looking at her pitiful body. Why you can't save her now? Rainer laughed weakly and coughed up colossal amounts of blood. He floated back and pointed his hand at her. He looked hatefully at her one last time before he sent a shower of lightning at her, having enough power to kill an army, but he didn't care, he only wanted the bitch dead. He looked at where she was and his mind clicked. He flew at great speeds to the cross and gasped at the sight. And I was tied to it using chains and was barely clothed. Issei tore at the chains and the light stopped. Hanai fell into his arms and a green light was emitted from her heart. 2 silver rings floated from her. He recognized them as her sacred gear. He put 2 and 2 together and worked out what the ritual was for. Issei took the rings and put them on her fingers. Come on, Hanai. You're strong, stay with me. She was fading out of consciousness, but managed to get some words out. I say, thanks FF4 for accepting me and being my FF friend. She smiled once more before her eyes emptied, the light fading. Hanai? Hanan. Come on Hanai, don't do this. He was almost in tears. Come on Hanny. He screamed out and the world shook with the elements running rampant, thunderstorms kicking off in countries, wind tearing up trees, waves rocking the world, blizzards tearing up mountains, gravity being distorted in some places, volcanoes threatening to erupt in islands. Riaz and her peerage were watching from the start and were amazed by his power. Riaz was heartbroken to see him like this and came up to him. Once he felt her presence, his rage slowly dispersed, allowing the world to return to normal. I couldn't save her Riaz. I couldn't save her. He looked up at her with tears spilling from his eyes. Riaz had an idea that Issei would like and she could benefit from it. She pulled Issei away from Hanai and her aura began to shine. Issei was entranced by what was happening. Riaz took out a bishop evil piece and put it on Hanai's half-naked chest and said her chant. Once she had finished, the piece was absorbed and Hanai's breath began again. Her peerage left at this point. Riaz was about to turn to Issei when she was suddenly held tightly by said boy. "Thank you so much, Riaz." He sobbed into her shoulder. Riaz just held him to her, happy to have him safe. She remembered what she had whispered to him before. Flashback. "I failed her, Riaz," he muttered. Riaz just knelt beside him, held him and whispered something in his ear. "Issei, you can save her. Only you, so go. Save your friend. I will be there to help if you need. I trust you. Now go." Then flashback. Issei cried into her and did so for about a minute. She just held him back, showing she was there for him. After he was done, he stood and picked up Hannai and covered her in electricity, covering her naked parts. Riaz teleported them home. Issei looked at the area, focused his magic, and everything started to fly back into place. The walls sealed, the furniture fixed, and the door replaced. Issei set Hannai down on the sofa again. He made his way up to his bed with Riaz. When they got there, Issei only took off his top, exhausted from the balance break. Riaz got naked and crawled beside him. He pulled her to him with a tired yet loving look in his eyes. "Thank you, Riaz." Issei thanked his love and master. "I love you." Riaz's heart got caught in her chest at that. She pulled him closer. "I love you too, Ice, never leave me. Never." The two faded into sleep, holding each other. Thanks for watching this video. Part 2 is over. If you really enjoy this video, like, subscribe, and comment down below, and turn on that bell notification. And also check out the playlist that I have created and enjoy. Link is in the description. See you in the next video. Goodbye.